Hello, hello. Welcome to FinServe Now. Can you believe we are we're near the end of Q4. So we are going to make this one so exciting for you with some incredible tidbits and a little bit of untraditional information. I'm your host, Zakia Larry. Welcome back. And if this is your first time, hello. This is a monthly series and we're so excited to talk to you. Now listen. Today is a really exciting topic, right? Because we have a lot of real estate professionals, mortgage professionals, and FinServe industry professionals across the board. So today we're going to talk real estate, but investing. You know what? As a matter of fact, our topic is leverage the industry to build your network, create wealth, and experience freedom. Ooh, freedom. We'll unpack what that means in just a moment because we will be bringing on our guest, Dr. David Phelps, who is the creator of Freedom Founders. Now, before David comes on, I got to tell you a little bit about him. One, let me start off by saying he is a professional and a human being that I really value, a really great friend, an exceptional human being, fantastic father. And David, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell the folks what you've been up to. I'm going to share a bit of your bio here. Folks, I got to let you know, and David will unpack this, but he managed a private dental practice for over 21 years. And even when he was in dental school, he began his investment in real estate by joint venturing with his father on their first property in 1980. But guess what? In 3 years, they sold that property and he took his $25,000 capital gain share, leveraged it into 31 properties that eventually produced 15,000 monthly net cash flow. That's going to be important for you to remember. But here's what I really admire about David. Life was great for him. Sky was the limit. And you know what? His daughter, Jenna, was diagnosed with leukemia. And so while she was in the midst of her cancer treatments, epilepsy, ultimately a liver transplant, oh my gosh, he made the crucial decision to leave clinical practice so that he can spend every waking moment with Jenna. Well, how do you fund that? Glad you asked. His plan B, and I know you'll talk to us about that, is a portfolio of cash flow producing real estate assets. And it gave him that freedom to focus 100% on Jenna. And she won the battle with the disease. And David still enjoys freedom to cherish every moment. So at the end of the day, guys, here's what I need you to understand about David. Just to put a bow on this, he combines his professional and personal experiences to illustrate how the tactical and the aspirational work together. Whoa. He helps other logical, rational professionals learn how to become dreamers. Hello, are we not all in the right place today? So he has a monthly newsletter, Path to Freedom, and hosts the Dentist Freedom Blueprint podcast. And of course, his Freedom Founders Mastermind community grows exponentially, where he teaches people, these logical, rational folks, to become dreamers and experience that financial freedom. My goodness, David, hi.
Zakia, it is always such a pleasure to be with you, and particularly for this particular conference, this summit. I think it's exciting what you're doing and setting the stage for 2021, which is, you said, is right around the corner.
Oh, absolutely. 2021 is upon us. And what I really love, David, is that today we're going to be talking about not only how you did it, but how our professionals here can go beyond the pivot, right? A lot of folks have been talking about COVID and pivot and pivot. Well, at this point, the pivots are done. How do we not just stabilize, but elevate? And you've been working with people creating that freedom through real estate. But here's the caveat. We have real estate professionals, licensed professionals. I'd love for us to bridge the gap between our investors who may not be agents, and so that we can see both sides of the coin and find out how we can creatively, exponentially create more money and thus freedom for our licensed professional and FinServe professionals. Sound good?
Absolutely.
Well, cool. So David, I'll jump into our first question here because, you know, I am not a licensed real estate professional, but I do a lot and have a lot of clients in the FinServe industry. So I want to just ask, can investment groups, much like Freedom Founders or individual real estate investors, can they help or hinder real estate professionals, those who are licensed by trade? Do you think those investment groups help or hinder?
Well, investment groups like Freedom Founders are made up, Zakia, of other business people who are busy in their lives and their, whether it's practices or just careers, but they've decided that they would like to invest in what we call the alternative space, which we say is Wall Street is Wall Street and Main Street is Main Street real estate. And so realize that you as professionals have a real opportunity to help people like us, and I include myself because even though I was active in my building of a portfolio of real estate, I was active in my early years. Where I am in my life today, I like to be more passive. Well, what does that mean? It means I need to invest with the collaboration, not competition, but the collaboration with other people and professionals. We talk at Freedom Founders about having a team, your team around you. Who does that include? Well, certainly it's got to include people that are professional in the industry, who know what the trends are, what the pulse is like, and certainly to have access to curated opportunities of investment. We don't have time as busy people in our own lives to go out and create the network that you all already have established. So I see it as an opportunity to bridge the gap between the two. If there is a gap, there shouldn't be a gap. I mean, we should be
Sure.
working together right now, and that's what we do in a small way in Freedom Founders. There's other groups in similar formats and fashion that can do the same thing if we're all in tune to having those conversations. How can we work together? Collaborate versus compete. It doesn't have to be the competition that we many times people think of.
Sure. David, I love how you really illustrated this because I'm already seeing opportunities for new lines of business, particularly if there are agents who are focused on, single family dwellings or smaller units. And we may touch on commercial in a bit. Instead of looking for the Smiths and the Joneses, there are hundreds of them gathered in one place as investors, and they still need your skill set. David, that just kind of opened it up for me. I love how you laid that out.
Yeah, well, think about it. We all have to determine in our own industry, our own business career, who's our ideal customer for us, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. But I think you need to pick a lane, because if you try to be all things to all people, that's where you're very little to a lot of people. So find out who's your avatar, and if you think about the investor or investment side, that pool of a potential buyer is many times going to be a repeat buyer more often than your retail homeowner. Again, nothing wrong with that
Mhm.
segment. I mean, if you're good there and differentiate there, all go for it. But we're talking about investors here. So investors like me and other people that are in our group, we don't buy just one property and hold it for 7 years and then sell it and move on to the next one. We'll buy one. Sometimes we'll buy batches of properties. So when you
Mhm.
think about the opportunity to scale your connections that you have to your product, single family residential, for an example, if you create some connections with investor groups, you create that relationship. Now that's an ongoing relationship, and you can have a repeat customer, buying your product and engaging with your services, because we need your service. We need the access to where are the best opportunities. Show me. I don't have time to go into and figure out MLS and curate, well, where are the investment opportunities? You're the boots on the ground. You have the information that we so much need to make our decisions.
That is so powerful. Really, really good insight there. By the way, folks, if you have questions or comments, drop them in the chat box and we will weave them into the conversation. So while we have David here, let's go ahead and pick his brain, which, by the way, is an entrepreneur. I do not like that phrase, but hey, David, you're here. So we're going to
So pick away.
thank you. But you know what? Speaking of brains, let's create another wrinkle in the brain, right? Another skill set, another sort of muscle we can use. Will you illuminate for us in what ways do your real estate endeavors, in what ways does your group work with industry professionals? You already talked about you don't have time to go through the system and find the properties, but what are some tangible ways every day that you guys work with licensed professionals so that we can get a sense of what's possible?
Yeah, so one of the easy ways to become kind of a conduit to potentially investor pools is I know that agents and brokers oftentimes provide for a lot of times for lenders BPOs. What's the asset value? A lender needs to know, maybe it's a distressed property and they want to know, well, what's the real value? So BPOs. Well, from an investor standpoint, we'd also like some boots on the ground current data about properties we might be looking at. So a BPO, a broker's price opinion, what is this property worth based on your knowledge of the demographics of your area? That's helpful. Inspections. I'm just giving you some easy ways to start to introduce yourself and put yourself out there so that you start to potentially create a pipeline of investors who would seek some basic services. Once you do that, now you've done some added value to a potential investor. Well, who are they going to call next time they want to buy a property in that area? If you provided an inspection service or referral to inspection service, if you're not doing them, I would say you have to do connections or everything. But a BPO would be another way that just on a base ground basis you can do it. Now, once you start to develop your positioning in your market, residential, commercial, whatever it might be, then you're building, your base there, and so now you're maybe want to target more investors who are looking for that particular asset class. Single family is I love single family because I talk to our members at Freedom Founders about that's a great place to start your investing, because single family residential is the easiest to do your due diligence on. It's the easiest to understand of all the asset classes. Now, it doesn't mean you can't start to graduate up, but I say start there. Start to understand that first, because then you'll get the pieces in place, and then you can move up to other commercial assets as you so desire. So there's a lot of opportunities there for those who are in that realm of single family residential to start building a pipeline of potential investors that you can carry forward, for years and years and years.
Really interesting. So David, let's go to the heart of the matter. Are there any roles that traditional professionals hold that are eliminated when investor groups come together and become large investor groups?
Well, can be. And I think to speak to what we already know about 2020, that there's immense change going on across the board in all industries. I come from healthcare, but also have my place in real estate, in finance, and areas that people here have. So, but we know across the board, massive changes happening. Then you throw in coronavirus and everything's upended, right? So we have to understand first and foremost that change is a part of our everyday life, personal and business. We don't typically like change. We'd all like to get into a routine where we can just know our model and go to work every day and just stay in that lane. But we have to unfortunately embrace change. Now, if you can do that and say things are always going to change, then you have to look at it from the standpoint that, yes, if you look at it from a competitive standpoint, to have investors come in and buy in bulk, in mass, properties, many times they will, not because they're trying to subvert the retail brokerage, but they're looking for, how can we come in and make a bulk buy, and many times they'll find another conduit to do that through. There has been for years and years and years a under the radar, call it a sub economy in the real estate arena, where you have people that are non-licensed that will go out and buy houses, for example, from sellers who are motivated. And many of the times those houses wouldn't make MLS because they need too much work, right? And it's just, so they'll buy them, and they'll either, we call them, they call them, I don't do this, but they wholesale them, or and so that kind of creates a sub-market. And many people in the industry that are licensed and have gone through all the work to become who you are would say, gosh, they're taking away my business. Well, you can look at it that way. But how about turning around saying, how could I, if you want to get in front of that wave, how could I be a part of that? Because there are people in that arena that actually look to work with licensees who have access to areas that they don't have. So you can put yourself in a position where you can either look at it as competition. You can say, oh, but there's a wave going on here, rather than just say, oh, I don't like it, or I'm going to fight it. How can you find a way to position yourself with that wave and ride with it and go with the trend? Because the trends are just going to happen. We can't push back on the things we don't like. We have to say, what can I do to add value to whatever the trend is? That's the way to look at it.
Well, David, I love that you mentioned wave. How can these licensed professionals here today both ride the wave and support the wave that's already cresting with these investors who are building wealth?
So how can you become a point of access to individual investors who would buy repeat from you for an investment, or even some of the larger funds? The hedge funds are big buyers. We even have, the iBuyers, right, that have been out there in the marketplace since probably 2019 and are out there. So you have to differentiate who you are. You have to decide what problems can I solve for my marketplace? And if you think about it today, so many people, consumers that or investors that are trying to either buy or sell properties, they're inundated with options. I mean, that's a benefit and a curse today. We have so much options and so much information. How could you become the consultative person, agent, broker, professional in your arena to not push back and obviate the other choices? You need to speak about what they are. So you have a client who's looking at, gee, I could just call up an iBuyer, and they promise, they make all these promises. They can come in and buy my property, sight unseen, and give me a number, and I don't have to have showings, and it sounds really clean. Well, we know nothing's perfect, so you can actually bring to the table and lay out in front of your potential client, here are the options. And they may not choose you on the first go round. They may say, thank you very much. But what you've done is you've provided a trusted service without trying to sign somebody up, without trying to sell something or sell your service. You provide an upfront service without taking anything. That builds trust. And when you do that, when someone's tried some other options, who are they going to come back to when they say, you know what, that didn't work out so well, I'm confused about that. This person over here actually came to me and brought me real value. They didn't try to sell me on something. They actually showed me, here are the options, here's the pros and cons of every option, including themselves, and they helped me decide what's best for me. When you approach the marketplace like that, you're gonna build that trust and build that recognition, build credibility, build authority, and now you become, a viable figurehead in your space that people will start to know about. But you've just got to decide where you want to play that role. There's many places to play. That's what I love about real estate. There's so many places to be involved in the marketplace, but decide where you want to be, and don't try to be all things to all people. That's where people get mixed up and confused, and they don't know you from Adam. You become a commoditized part of the industry, and you don't want to be that.
Oh, wow. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be a commoditized part of the industry. That's so good. So, David, let's shift a little bit. So, for the folks who are not licensed real estate professionals, they're in the FinServ industry in another capacity. Maybe they're interested in investing in properties and building wealth and freedom in that way. Take us behind the veil with your experience. What frustrations have you felt with the real estate industry as you've been searching for securing properties? What frustrations have you felt as a consumer? And how did you solve for those actually?
Well, I believe that sometimes the barrier to entry for an investor who is wanting to get started is finding somebody who kind of speaks their language. And again, it goes back to my point of not trying to be all things to all people. If you're really good and really have a marketplace for the consumer, you're really helping that home buyer who wants to buy a home, that's awesome. And there's always going to be a place for that. Always going to be a place for that. So if that's where your forte is, stay there. But I find, again, many licensees don't really speak the language of the investor. What's the investor looking for? And they haven't really maybe developed the network to serve that investor, which would include, again, inspections and particular contractors and really good management companies, which is the secondary aspect of once you acquire a property, now somebody's got to manage it and deal with tenants and all the things that a typical, what I call accidental landlord type investor is going to run into, right? Because they don't know. So again, if that's where you want to place your emphasis, then understand what the issues are for that particular customer, potential customer or client of yours. What are their issues, and how can you bring together a network within inside your network that can serve them? Because it's the service after the sale. It's not just selling someone a property who could be a great property, but all the other issues that investor is going to run into that you should know about. You probably do know about. How can you build in a network that provides that added value? Now you're giving them service that most others are not, because you know that in every industry, not just real estate, but every industry, too many people are focused on the transaction which puts food on the table. It pays the utility bills. I get it, but that's transactional business is not going to build you a long-term income stream that has repeat business over and over again. So we have to get away from just transactions. What can we do to add that extra value, even if there's some cost of time or real cost to provide that? We want that repeat business. It's more important for that to focus on that.
Wow, thank you, thank you. So I'm going to drill down a little bit. Have there been any changes to your real estate investment endeavors during all of the shifts of 2020, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, certainly. And you mentioned at the very front end about the pivots. We've
Yeah,
all had to make pivots personally and in business. So many pivots, more in 2020 than probably in a lifetime, right? We've got enough to
literally.
last a lifetime now. So can we just call it good for this year and say, we
Yes,
passed like with at least a C grade? I'm hopeful.
exactly.
I'm hopeful we can move on. But yes, to your point, specifically investments,
Mhm.
we look at when markets turn into volatile, disruptive markets with uncertainty, which we certainly have with COVID, with the election, with things to come. We don't know. There's so much unsettling. So to be very specific, what we look for more today is how can we hedge? How can we hedge our positions? Because we don't know. Nobody has a crystal ball. No economist, no guru out there can actually say they know what's going to happen in 2021. We could say the
Right.
market could continue to be up as it has kind of after COVID. We took a little pause, a little dip, and boom, the market overall, notwithstanding some asset classes, but most overall are back up again and running well. Well, how long does that last? I could go into variables, which I won't to, that could upend that, but how do we hedge? So we have to look at the debt investment side, not debt as a liability, which is what you use to obviously buy
Mhm.
properties, use debt in a good way, but owning debt as an asset, lending money. So there's lots of opportunities for investors to lend money to professional borrowers or do it through syndications or fund managers, where on the lending side, there's more margin for risk mitigation. And there's more liquidity, meaning so you can put your money in a debt asset that can give you a chance to move that money more easily than you can when you're in an equity ownership position. So you
Mhm.
need some of both. And I look at the debt side as being more actual regular, sustainable, predictable income. And the equity side today could be more focused on potential growth. We want sustainable income in most cases, but again, we've seen with the dip in COVID, and still even today, there's moratorium on evictions in many locales, and that may be increased again. There's forbearance on certain lenders taking action against people who are in default. That could go on. So that equity side can be a little bit vulnerable, but you need to have a growth side. You need a debt side for your predictable income and figuring out that ratio for you. But I'm a little heavier on the debt side today, a little bit less on the equities. If the market shifts, I may go back and reallocate those ratios again in the near future.
Interesting. Thank you for giving us a peek into that. So let's talk about being competitive in this market. You just gave us some incredible ideas for new lines of businesses here, but I want us to give tips for two different audiences here. Okay, just to set context. What can agents do, or what can they tweak or even overhaul to be more competitive in this landscape where there are a lot more key players, okay,
Mhm.
agents, but what can investors do to be more competitive as well? There are only so many properties. Agents, what can we do? Investors, what can we do?
Yeah, let's start with agents. And this again goes for anybody in any industry today. More than ever, one needs to differentiate themselves from the overall market. I talked about commoditization. It happens in healthcare. It's happening in healthcare. You're a doctor with XYZ license, you went to a certain school. Nobody cares what your consumer, what your potential client wants to know is, how can you help me? Are you the right person to help me? It's not about your degree, it's about your years in the industry. Forget that. It's about your message to the market, and specifically the market, your avatar. I mean, again, who is your best client? Who is the client you want to serve? Get key on that and know what that is, know who that person is, and what problems they have. When you start identifying with people and relating to the problems that they have, you have to think about what's inside their head, what's keeping them up at night, what wakes up John or Susie, if that's your client, at night. You've got to know their demographics and their psychographics. When you know that, now you're speaking to them through all of your messaging, all of your marketing, advertising, whatever you use in that. It's got to speak to that. That's how you differentiate. That's how you remain competitive in a marketplace where most people won't do that. I mean, the people that are here for this conference, that's why you're here. You're here to gain that competitive edge. But I say first and foremost, determine who your ideal client is, who do you want to serve, and know everything you can about them. Actually create an avatar where you actually put a face and a name. I mean, age, where they live, and the number of kids, and education, and speak to that person with everything you speak all the media that you use. You think about that person. So that's what I would tell the agents to do. Now, on the investor side, because yes, you're right, because of where we are in the market right now, and that the opportunities are much thinner today for great opportunities. because there's so much money in the marketplace. There's so much money looking for yield today, and so much money that is afraid of Wall Street, and so moving to the tangible assets that I love, which is real estate. I mean, there's a big movement there, and I think there will continue to be more movement. There's a flight to quality just from the global aspect of money. I mean, billions of dollars flowing to the U.S. from international sites looking again for investment in tangible assets. So that pushes up the price points. We know that. It makes it harder to find the opportunities that we feel like fit the uncertainty in the marketplace. The only way investors can really obviate that is you've got to develop or put yourself inside a network, and sometimes that means pay to play. I mean, it means get inside networks that have truly built networks that have access to the right people, the right professionals in the industry, like through FinServ. Who are those people? You've got to build those networks, because again, investors are typically too busy. It's not their field. They want to invest, but they don't have the time. So you've got to get inside other groups. And I made that part of my life since I left professional practice years ago, is how can I be in other groups where I can develop those networks? So I have access points. I've got a digital Rolodex. I can call people, find out what's going on, but also I get, many times first opportunity for certain investments because I've taken the time and effort. Well, if you don't have the time and effort, you just need to get inside those groups. I mean, be a part of them, because that's how you'll get a first opportunity. Real estate is a great place to invest because it's an inefficient marketplace. Inefficient versus Wall Street, which is very efficient. The inefficiencies create the opportunity, but it also means you can't just click a mouse to find good investments. You've got to have access points. And I think that's what you do through agents, licensees, mortgage professionals in the industry who have created you as the avatar and are speaking to you. Wow, I want to know that person. I need to get inside their group. What do I need to do that to make it happen for me?
Oh, that is so good. That's such good advice. So, David, I've mentioned Freedom Founders. You've mentioned Freedom Founders. So, as we land this plane here, and I wish we had more time because your energy is amazing, but as we sort of put a bow on today's conversation, your mastermind group is called Freedom Founders. And I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of the sessions. Phenomenal, high energy, but high impact information. Tell us about Freedom Founders. We know a little bit about why you started it, but tell us your passion there. And what are you guys doing right about now? Let us take a little peek.
So my passion was really when you mentioned my story about leaving practice a number of years ago, when it was all my focus on Jenna. But the fact that real estate, my very basic real estate investing portfolio up to that point, but gave me enough margin and cash flow from the real estate that let me go free. So that became a real calling point for other people who very organically reached out to me and said, David, I understand why you did it, but how did you do it? And so Freedom Founders just grew out of that, because I said, if I'm going to help more people, I'm not going to be the one to go out and find the deals. I mean, that's again where you need a team. So I have people that I've known for many, many years who bring the opportunities, and we still vet them and curate them and try to create as much of a safety net as possible, even though there's never guarantees in life, so that our members who are in business and they're professionals and healthcare people that want to engage in a network that has the access, that's what we do. And of course we teach. I want our members to be educated. I want to teach them about due diligence and give them the reason why they're investing in real estate and what that looks for them in terms of their model and their milestones. So we're not trying to make them professionals like people here at FinServ, but we want them to be educated people who are investing for the right reason. So it's a small group. It's an intimate group. And what are we doing today is really, it's what we talked about a few minutes ago. It's like, how do we traverse the current marketplace, which is volatile, it's uncertain. And again, no one has the perfect crystal ball, but we talk about, again, hedging. So we're doing what I said. We're kind of just making our allocations between debt and equity opportunities, whether it's single family or it's in syndications into multifamily self-storage, mobile home park communities, or we have some fund managers that have different slices of different asset classes within their funds, and allows for a broad diversification, different slices for different folks, of course, but that's really what we do in a nutshell.
Interesting. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, I want to just really illuminate this right before we close. We keep talking about freedom, we understand, but I want to make sure people are crystal clear that you were, and you still are, but you owned a private dental practice. You were up early and to bed late, and it was the grind, the grind, the grind. So freedom began for you with saying, being inside of my practice every single day is just not working for me anymore. I wanted to make sure we really illuminated what freedom meant. It's these professionals walking away, not leaving, but stepping outside of their private practices and using real estate to do that. I wanted to make sure we really illuminate that because there are doctors who have their own offices, there are lawyers who have their own firms. This is really creating that wrinkle, right? Who can we speak to?
Yeah, it's about the message really is to help these busy professionals create sustainable, predictable revenue streams outside of their practice. They're not tied to the volatility of Wall Street. I'm not bashing Wall Street, but there's enough people that
Sure.
want something alternative. They know they need to balance it with something, and they don't know where to go. They don't know how to do it, or they've tried it, meaning they've tried to buy a house and rent it out, or flip this house like you see on TV, and they realize that's not what I had in mind. So they need help. They need help figuring this model out, and that's the opportunity I think that everybody here has is how can you speak to those people within your industry model and make that a valid part of your game plan.
Wow, David, thank you so much for being here with us. And just lastly, tell us how to connect with you and Freedom Founders. How do we follow? How do we support?
Certainly. Well, the main page is freedomfounders.com. You can find a little bit more about, my story and kind of who we serve. I do a regular podcast, which, anybody's welcome to jump onto weekly. It's the Dentist Freedom Blueprint podcast, or dentistfreedomblueprint.com. You can find it there, and you can hear me speaking to my client base a lot about real estate and the market cycles, some about business aspects and transitions, but that's a good place to plug in. You can also, through the website, if you want to jump on and get my newsletter, Path to Freedom will send that to you digitally, things like that. So those are good places to connect.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. David Phelps, creator of Freedom Founders, thank you so much for broadening our horizons today. And then remember, folks, third Tuesday of every month, we just have one more month left in this year. And then when we have our December broadcast, I will be sharing a special announcement about 2021. What will we be doing to continue to help you not just pivot, but to potentially shift and grow and build your wealth in your line of business? So always go to counselforinclusion.org/finserve-now. counselforinclusion.org/finserve-now. Now listen, if you have other professionals who needed to hear this today, because I know they do, not only are we going to send out this broadcast to you guys, but please share. Make sure you share and make sure you connect with David. Thank you again, David. Have a fantastic afternoon. And guys, I will see you next month.
My pleasure.